So hi, everyone. I see we've got a few people that have joined us, and I'm sure more will be joining us as we get moving here. So thank you for joining us for our first Phenomics Health Masterclass. And this one is entitled Unlocking the Secrets of Menopause and Your Biochemical Uniqueness. And this is really for Global Menopause Day. So happy Global Menopause Day to you. It's also Global Menopause Awareness Month. And I think it's really terrific that we have organized ourselves this way to recognize the importance of this stage of life for women. So thanks for joining us. We have some Phenomics team members on the call that will be helping me today too. We have Lizianne and Naomi, and I think Helene is joining us as well. So fantastic team behind the scenes. I'm the lucky one that gets to present. So what we want to do today is really introduce menopause, the menopause journey transition to you. So this webinar is really for women that are on their journey or preparing for their journey. Maybe you think that you have some symptoms that are like perimenopause. Maybe you're really, really contemporary and you're trying to plan ahead. But I think this kind of awareness is so important, and we're getting better and better at this with our global menopause awareness activities. So we want to equip you with some tools for your journey. We want to inspire you and help you unlock the secrets that you need to unlock to have a successful journey. So today's topics include women as a biological system, how we look at women over the life cycle, and the windows of vulnerability for nutrition and hormonal health. We'll talk about some practical guidance for personalized nutrition and self-tracking and personalized nutrition in menopause. And I have to say, you'll learn a little bit about us at Phenomics Health throughout our webinar today. We are always learning just like you, and we all come from different vantage points. We'd love to hear from you on our chat today. If you have questions, you can also email us with questions at wecare@phenomics.ch. And also, if you've got new information, because we're really evolving in our own journey at Phenomics Health, and perhaps you've got new and interesting information you can share with us to make things go well. So I just want to ask if people can actually see the screen that I am sharing. Because I just got a note that maybe you cannot.
No, we do not. We do not see the screen. We only see you, Colleen.
Okay. Well, that's not so interesting. So let me fix that. Okay, can you see the screen now? Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to talk about women as a biological system, practical guidance for personalized nutrition, and self-tracking in personalized nutrition in menopause. So let's go. I want to give you a little background on myself. So I'm super passionate, and at Phenomics Health, we're all really committed to bridging the gap between scientific research and women's health solutions. So only 4% of R&D is currently invested in women's health, and only like 0.001% of that in aging women's health. So we are really committed to using molecular nutrition and systems biology to uncover the connections with women's health and to open new avenues for personalized wellness. Phenomics is actually a digital precision nutrition company. We're currently focused on precision nutrition for midlife, highly focused on women, and soon we are also focused on Phenom Y, the midlife man, because many partners want to support one another and go through this together. and we think we can help you do that. So women's health, and particularly menopause, remains uncharted territory. And it's time to uncover the unique nutritional requirements that impact your hormonal health and overall well-being. I also want to say this is a global health need. So this is not just women in Switzerland and US and Europe, but all over the world that need more support and guidance in precision nutrition and scientific wellness for their hormonal health journeys. So when we talk about a biological system at Phenomics Health, we're looking at the interconnection of the multitude of symptoms that women experience over their life cycle journey. And we've got them listed here. These are the various categories that we look at. And in fact, we have a smartphone app, and we have all 14 of these categories in the smartphone app. And you can click on each of these categories, and then you can choose the symptoms you're experiencing, the severity and the frequency. But we're really focused on ways that we can uncover the root cause of imbalances that affect your health. So we see symptoms as one way that you see that you have health imbalances. And for us, we're really focused on the sum of the parts. So we know that your gut health affects your brain and your immune health and your skin health and your energy, and your diet impacts the multitude of symptoms that you can experience health-wise, and that there's something that you can do about it. So we consider these perturbations in the system that we just need to rebalance. And we can do this by looking at biomarkers of health, your self-reported symptoms, and so on. So women's biology changes throughout the life cycle. And in R&D, we've often historically gotten quite hyper-focused on pregnancy, fertility, lactation, and this is truly a vulnerable time in a woman's life, but it's not the only time. For example, in adolescence, 80% of teen girls have period pain or PMS and are not able to do their usual schoolwork and usual activities. On young adulthood, women are constantly managing their menstrual cycle, managing their premenstrual syndrome. Maybe they're dealing with PCOS and endometriosis, all of which are influenced by diet and lifestyle. And then, of course, pregnancy, we mentioned already, but what we don't prepare ourselves for very well is this midlife menopause journey. And, historically, I think we thought of it as, women with gray hair wearing polyester suits, or that are too old and tired to do things. And this is not necessarily the case. This is a highly productive time in a female's life. But the key is to understand what's going on and what she can do about it. It's a 10+ year journey, and so not for the faint of heart. And a woman can have up to 60 symptoms that change and cluster over time. Now, the whole goal of this is to have a nice, healthy menopause, learn how to navigate it, because once you do, then you can ensure that you have a nice, healthy aging journey. This is actually the essence of longevity for women. So look, I'm not going to get too much into deciphering scientific articles for you today. I'm really trying to inspire everyone to improve their diet. But I do want to share this with you just as for a moment here, because this was some research work that we did that we published back in 2018. So I defended my PhD as a midlife woman. I started my career as a clinical dietitian, and I did a lot of research work while actually having my babies and raising a family. And then I did my PhD while I was working in a corporate job here in Switzerland. So this was one of the 4 papers that I had to publish. And this was actually one of our favorites here. So it's important to understand the menstrual cycle. Actually, not all women have this detailed understanding. If you look at this graph on the right, you see that the menstrual cycle is either divided into 4 phases or 5, depending on how you look at it, and also split in 2 between follicular and luteal. So you have your menstrual phase, which is when you menstruate, obviously. So your hormones are lowest, then you move into your follicular phase, where you've got a nice spike in estrogen, and then after that, a spike in luteinizing and follicular stimulating hormones that feed into your periovulatory phase when you're at the peak of fertility. And then you move into your luteal and premenstrual phases. Here, you've got a gradual increase again of estrogen, not quite as high as the first half of your cycle, but this is where you get to have your big influx of progesterone. And what's key to know here is that this luteal phase is a window of vulnerability in the female menstrual cycle. And so you can see this defended on the left in this scientific graphic. And as a non-scientist, this is all you need to know. All you need to know is if you look at that red column, red means actually low. And then we've got these biomarkers listed on the right. And what it tells us is that these biomarkers that we measured in each of these phases of the menstrual cycle were really, really low in this luteal phase. This is the vulnerable window because their bodies are actually using more protein and more fat during this time. So if your diet is really poor during this time, you're going to have more nutrient insufficiencies that might increase the risk of premenstrual syndrome and increase the chance that you have an uncomfortable period. So let's talk about menopause. 50% of women don't even realize that they're on this journey. And I'll be very honest that I didn't realize when I started my perimenopause journey. I got some hints because of the field I was working in, and that my premenstrual symptoms were prolonged up to 2 weeks long before I would get my period. And I knew this was part of perimenopause. A lot of women don't really realize this, and that some of this additional severe PMS can be the signs that your hormones are starting to change. And initially they change up and down. So there's a lot of variability in your hormone levels, which also can create some discomfort and more severe symptoms. Also, what a lot of women don't realize is that menopause is actually one day. So it's actually that day when you've been 1 year without a menstrual period. That means that you're no longer fertile. And after that, you're in postmenopause. So perimenopause is the irregular menstrual cycles where there's increasing symptoms. And sometimes these are new symptoms. You might have hot flashes, you might have heart palpitations, something's different. And then when you head into postmenopause, right immediately postmenopause, women still have symptoms, and this often is more of these vasomotor symptoms. Anxiety is another example, but there are many different kinds of symptoms that ensue and progress, vaginal dryness, etc. But it's not all depressing. There is hope. There's a lot that we can do about this, and it's really about just having the knowledge and empowering yourself with the knowledge of what you can do. So what else changes during menopause? So there is definitely a tendency towards increased BMI. Why is this? Because as estrogen decreases, unfortunately, metabolic rate decreases, but also our satiety decreases. So you don't get full as easily. Food cravings increase. And this also causes an increase in your visceral fat. That's that menobelly, which is not so lovely, where you notice that your waist size is increasing. And it is important to manage this as well as you can, because higher visceral fat is associated with cardiovascular disease and other metabolic diseases, diabetes. We do see increased markers of inflammation. These are protein markers in the blood that can indicate that there's inflammation in different parts of the body. And we see increased insulin resistance and changes with blood sugar control, because it turns out estrogen helps us a whole lot with blood sugar control. Our microbiome composition changes. And of course, there is an increased risk of depression that occurs during this time. So in our smartphone app, we actually track the various symptom categories as I pointed out already. And in fact, all these symptoms are interrelated. And so it's really important to somehow track your symptoms and how they change over time, because they can give you insights on what you might be able to change in your diet and lifestyle. And I really see that, nutrition, emotional fitness, psychological safety, movement, and exercise are all key foundational components that will wholeheartedly influence the severity of the symptoms that you experience during this time. So let's talk about the Mediterranean diet. So the Mediterranean diet has been very well researched for a multitude of health benefits, and in fact has been very well researched for menopause. So this is an example of a study on 100 obese women. These are women that just were just over a BMI of 30 and greater than 45 years of age. They all adhered to a Mediterranean diet. And what they found was that they had a greater chance of a lower body weight, a decreased prevalence of hot flashes, a decrease in fatigue, protection against depression. The researchers saw that a higher legume consumption decreased symptom severity, and higher extra virgin olive oil reduced psychological symptoms. There's also other studies that show the Mediterranean diet protects against diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and osteoporosis. So this should be convincing enough to want to ensure that your diet is like a Mediterranean diet in ways that are acceptable to you, that are possible for you. And so here's a simple list of some ways that you can ensure that you are following a nice, healthy Mediterranean diet. And this can, help mitigate some of your risk factors associated with your menopause journey. So first and foremost is to eat an abundance of plant foods, including fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and legumes that are really minimally processed, that are seasonally fresh, and when possible, are grown locally. So there's a journalist named Michael Pollan. He wrote a book called The Omnivore's Dilemma. And at the end of this extensive book, where he did a huge amount of research on, what was a healthy diet, what was the healthiest way to eat, he concluded to eat plants, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So over and over, this is something that we see in the research literature, that when there's more of an emphasis on plants, we feel better and we protect ourselves from developing chronic diseases. And sometimes we can even reverse chronic diseases. Using olive oil, which is a monounsaturated fat, as the principal source of fat is important. And cheese and yogurt is consumed daily, but in low to moderate amounts. So easy for us to do in Switzerland. We love our Gruyere cheese. But one of the things that you have to be aware of also when you're looking at your own unique biochemistry is what foods affect you and how. And we actually have in our smartphone app, we have a page for this. It's actually on, we'll show you a QR code for the app shortly. And there's a section called My Nutrition and Lifestyle, where you can just record your patterns, like the things that you eat that might affect how you feel negatively or might affect how you feel positively. So for example, there is a little bit of research, and I think I'll get to it soon here, that suggests that dairy can increase hot flashes. And some women report this wholeheartedly. So you might want to, if you're having a lot of hot flashes or heart palpitations, or you're feeling just some excessive heat, you might want to consider just reducing your cheese, yogurt, dairy for a little while. This is not permanent. And you can also ensure that you get other sources of calcium. For example, there is soy milk that has calcium and vitamin D added to it, for example. But there are various ways you can ensure you get calcium in, also through supplementation, to make sure that you keep your bones strong. But in the meantime, taking it easy on the dairy can help while you're going through a high hot flash period. But it's not forever, it's not permanent. So that's the good news. Fish and poultry should be consumed a few times a week at least. Of course, fish gives us omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory fatty acids, and are highly recommended for various symptoms that we have of hormone imbalance. And meat should be consumed infrequently. Now, meat actually provides heme iron, which is the most readily absorbable. So if you're still menstruating and if you're having heavy periods, I would say red meat is quite a good idea for you, but it should always be the side dish. You don't need large quantities of it. Some women who are hot flashing, again, going back to that, do find that red meat can make them worse. So that's something to be aware of. But I think the key is to treat it as a side dish, eat it periodically to get your B12 and your heme iron. And then the rest of the time for other protein sources like chicken, fish, or plant proteins, which are quite good during this time. Fresh fruit for dessert, that's also with no added sugars. Really minimize added sugar during this time. You will notice that the added sugar will increase your symptom severity. Save it for special occasions where you can really enjoy it and savor it, and not too much. Wine is consumed in low to moderate amounts, usually with meals. Okay, here's another one. Some women report increased symptoms with wine intake. So what does this mean? Does it mean that you should never drink wine again and you should stop all alcohol? I actually don't recommend that. And maybe I'm a little bit biased because I live in Europe and this is part of our culture, is going out to eat and having a glass of wine with friends. What it is really about is the amount and the timing. So for example, if you are tired, you've had a really stressful week and you're really exhausted, probably drinking wine or too much wine is going to have more of a negative impact than if you're feeling really good and you've been following a healthy diet and you've gotten enough sleep. So make the decisions on your drinking based on how you feel, and also look at the quantities. So if you really suspect that you're not going to feel good when you drink some wine, then just have one glass, or maybe cut your glass in half with some fizzy water so that you can savor it a little bit longer. And also the last point is very obvious, which is eating the highest quality foods that you can. And this also feeds a little bit into our European lifestyle here, which is really about enjoying the food with friends and family. And this also matters with regards to digestion, how quickly you eat, etc. So we talked already a bit about hot flashes, just looking at some of the research, and we do see that increased intake of actually poultry and dairy products can increase the frequency and severity of your symptoms. So this is something for you to self-track and be aware of. And this is, we've built a smartphone app to help you do this that we'll talk about at the end a little bit. And it's a freely available smartphone app. It's Phenomics Health in the App Store. So you can already check for it. And also we see decreased severity of symptoms from vegetable and soy milk consumption. So this is a really good time to increase your intake of plants, and we'll give you some shortcuts on how to do that. Also, we talked a little bit about alcohol, but spicy food, caffeine, and high fat and high sugar food choices can worsen symptoms. And honestly, it's about figuring out which of those matter the most for you, really, and listen to your body. So this is really a trial and error kind of situation. We're just going to talk about the daily rainbow. So I believe in making the complex simple. And in the case of nutrition science and diet, this is certainly a complicated field. We're learning more and more. I think it's also complicated for people who are not experts, in that there's a constant, information overload and difficulty with deciphering what's good and what's bad. But one thing I want to tell you is that for the most part, plant food is, for the most part, never bad. And the fresher, the better. So you can set a goal, for example, to eat a fruit or vegetable from one of these colors we have on the screen here every day. And you can actually track this. So we created a rainbow diet tracker, and the team here has actually, the Phenomics Health team has built a white book from this presentation, but it contains a lot more information than what I'm talking about today. And we're going to offer that to you as a gift for joining us in this webinar today. So stay tuned, you'll get your rainbow diet tracker. But the idea is to eat fruits and vegetables from each of these colors every day. And why do you want to do that? Because you get all different kinds of phytochemicals with various health promoting properties, such as decreasing oxidative stress, preventing cancer, decreasing cardiovascular disease risk, decreasing osteoporosis risk, and also helping with your gut health, feeding your gut. Also, all of these foods are anti-aging foods. So there's a lot of good reasons to eat your daily rainbow and get as big a variety of foods as possible. And honestly, you could just do this every day and track the number of colors you're eating, and you will improve your diet substantially without doing anything else. So another way you can approach eating a healthy diet to improve your symptoms, to improve your energy, for example, is through fiber. So fiber gets forgotten about sometimes because it's not as sexy of a topic. But in fact, it is one of the most powerful focuses that you can have in improving your diet. If you do nothing else, do a test for a week and see if you can eat 25 grams of fiber per day. So first of all, let me tell you that if you go from 3 grams of fiber one day to 25 the next, you may not feel very good because it's a little too much at once. But if you gradually increase your fiber intake, you should feel just fine. And the way that you can do this is that know that high fiber foods contain 3 to 5 grams per serving. And so these are my American portions from my dietetics days, but a half a cup cooked or a cup raw veggies will have somewhere from 3 to 5 grams of fiber as an example. And so you can set a goal, look at the contents of the foods that you're eating and see if you can eat every food that you choose to eat has fiber in it in a day. And if you can't do that, can you at least eat 9 high fiber foods in a day? So this is a great thing to try and track. And I'll tell you, I actually used this recently. So here I'm a nutritionist, scientist for over 30 years and had a huge issue with my gut health. And for a week, I actually challenged myself to make sure that every food I ate had fiber in it. And it took about a week and my gut health improved. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind when you take this approach is that you need to ensure adequate hydration, drinking water throughout the day, herbal teas, non-caloric beverages, preferably during this time, are much better. And you can check that you're adequately hydrated by looking at your pee. And if it's very light yellow and you're producing large quantities, chances are you're sufficiently hydrated. So why is that important? Because you need the water in order to actually work with the fiber to move things through your system. So speaking of the gut, I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk about the microbiome and menopause. We could do a whole webinar on this. And in fact, we'd love to hear from you if you are interested in having a webinar specifically on microbiome and the estrobolome and hormonal health. So we know that the female gut microbiome changes throughout the life cycle. And we see in the literature that this is driven by sex hormones. We also see this for the skin microbiome and also the vaginal microbiome. And these changes in the microbiome are also associated with health changes. We know that gut bacteria actually recycle the estrogens that your body is actually excreting and actually helps them re-enter into circulation. So if your gut microbiome is healthy and diverse, it can really help you optimizing your hormone metabolism. We also know that the birth control pill has been shown to decrease microbial diversity. And because the birth control pill can actually be a bit lower in hormones than your natural hormone levels. Unfortunately, gut bacteria diversity decreases after menopause, and postmenopausal women having increased amounts of bacteria that are associated with inflammation and obesity, and also a decrease in the bacteria that make these short-chain fatty acids, which are basically foods for your gut cells. So we like short-chain fatty acids. Gut bacteria convert isoflavones from soy into estrogen-like compounds that act like estrogen in the body. So it's really powerful, and it has a really strong effect on our on our hormone functioning. And we know it also plays a role in osteoporosis and bone, preventing osteoporosis through bone mineralization. And early research does suggest, and we're really not experts in hormone replacement therapy at Phenomics, but early research does suggest that hormone replacement therapy could improve microbiome composition. So we're excited to see that change over time. And so that's kind of my summary on the microbiome. I see I have a couple of questions here. Can gut bacteria recycle estrogen to re-enter circulation? Yes. So the body actually excretes excess estrogen through the liver, through the intestines, and then the bacteria actually interact with the estrogen. The estrogen is bound in a way that it can be excreted, but the bacteria will actually unbind it so that it can then be reabsorbed into circulation. And I am referring to beneficial bacteria. Yes. Do estrogens recirculate and contribute to an so can this recirculation also contribute to an estrogen dominance situation? So that that is actually a really good question. That is this a negative thing that you can create estrogen dominance from this hormone recirculation? I'm going to tell you something. I don't know the answer to that. So if anybody else on the call is an expert in estrogen and sex hormone dominance, which is also something that happens pre-menopausal and also could be problematic during perimenopause, please feel free to comment. It's a really good question. I think we're still learning about that, still trying to understand what that means. So let's talk a little bit about weight management for menopause, because this is something that many women face. And I think I mentioned a few things about this already. So with the decreasing estrogen, satiety decreases. So that means that we're going to eat more to feel full. Sweet cravings increase, which is a bit ironic for us because of the fact that now our body actually is more sensitive to excess carbohydrate intake. And we can see that through blood sugar analysis and continuous glucose monitoring, which is something I'll talk about in a few minutes. And it's something that I'm a huge fan of, actually. And metabolically active muscle decreases. So we call this sarcopenia. And so one thing that you'll notice, and this is a part of aging as well, which is simply that if you don't exercise on your usual schedule, you'll see a much quicker decline in your muscle mass. And this is much more metabolically active than your fat mass. So this means that you can also, increase your body fat more easily and decrease your energy expenditure. So it's important actually to take care of your muscles and to exercise with weight training to overcome this. And I mentioned that energy metabolism does decrease, but if you're exercising and following a really healthy diet, then this doesn't have to be consequential for you. There is a natural increase in belly fat, but unfortunately that is visceral fat. So you want to manage it, and your body shape will change, but you want to manage this to the best that you can. And you can do that by actually following some of the guidelines we've discussed already, and also really tracking yourself and being aware of what you're putting in your body and how it's affecting you. So I mentioned the less optimal carbohydrate metabolism because of this interrelationship with estrogen. And we do see an increase in stress eating, particularly post-menopause. So what I see is that women have a lower stress threshold. Our neurotransmitter production, like our serotonin production, is affected. And thus the way that we respond to our stress and our threshold of our response is a bit lower before we really stop being able to handle our external environment. And so some women, some people will choose, a behavioral stress eating approach to deal with this. Other women will complain of increased anxiety. And so this is just, I think it's a really good thing to be aware of, you know, because maybe you haven't done a lot of stress eating in your life, or you've managed it very well. But once you enter into this time, it might be different. Things might feel different, and that awareness is really good. So I think also to be compassionate with yourself. This is like a second adolescence. This is a highly imperfect time, and it's time to actually embrace that, all of the imperfections of life and being human, but also is just creating this awareness. And in our Phenomics Health app, that, like I mentioned, is totally free to use. We actually have a diary where you can record your emotions, and we have a speech to text option in the app, so you can record this pretty quickly. And we also do this because a lot of menopausal women experience rage, and the rage that is described is this very relentless rage. So there is a rage button on our app. You press it and you go right to the emotions diary, and you can immediately record how you feel. We love our rage button. So what can you do? So I mentioned self-tracking to increase awareness. Lots of research that shows how helpful this is. I mentioned some examples of nutrition heuristic approaches, eating your rainbow or counting your fiber. Keeping it simple. I think this is really super important. Keep it simple so you don't get overwhelmed. You know, most midlife women or women going through this journey are very busy balancing work, family, social life. And so nutrition and scientific wellness, a strong, healthy lifestyle shouldn't be hard. Got to figure out what works for you, but try to find ways to keep it simple. And I mentioned the exercise with weight training and how important that is for combating the muscle mass decrease. I do want to tell you that when you do weight training, you also see a very nice quick response to the weight training and an increase in strength. So it goes both ways. You're quick to lose it, but you're quick to regain it. But exercise also increases neurotransmitter production. So I mentioned, for example, serotonin, but also dopamine tend to be a little bit potentially lower during this time. And if you exercise, you increase both of those neurotransmitters. So maybe you can also increase your stress threshold. A lot of women find that exercise becomes a key element for managing their mental, emotional fitness and well-being during this time. And timing of food intake does matter. There is actually research on this. Chrononutrition that's what the field is called. It's still early, but there is published research that shows that you can lose more weight if you eat a big meal earlier in the day. And this is actually true for men and women. So they actually did a study, and I'm sorry, I don't remember all the statistics right now, but they compared people who they put them all on a caloric deficient diet, but some had their meals in the evening, and some had their big meal in the evening, and some had their big meals at lunch. And those that had their big meals at lunch lost more weight. The body is more metabolically active at different times of the day. And this is an example of that. So actually for you, what you need to figure out is what works best. What is the best timing of the day for you to eat where you feel good and when you can manage your weight? I mentioned I'm a big fan of continuous glucose monitoring, and we will actually offer this in conjunction with our app that I mentioned in 2024. So right now we don't offer it, but we will be adding it. And we just actually submitted a research proposal with a gynecologist at a Swiss hospital here with whom we're building a collaboration to actually look at continuous glucose monitoring in women post-menopause and women on HRT. And we will be incorporating this in because I think this is a very nice approach to self-awareness. So I'll tell you, I don't have a slide on this, so I'll just tell you a little bit more about this right now, because you can actually purchase a continuous glucose monitor from your local pharmacy here in Europe. In the United States, they are covered with insurance. You can ask your doctor if your doctor will write a prescription for, we call it a CGM. And it is a a circle with a very skinny interstitial needle that you do not feel at all. You put it on your arm, kind of the back of your shoulder, and you wear it for 2 weeks. And it will monitor your blood glucose throughout the day for those 2 weeks. You can see the response, the metabolic response of your body to the food that you're eating, which is actually quite incredible. Because the truth is that we all respond a little differently based on our genetics, based on the kinds of foods that we regularly eat, based on our entire environment. We respond to carbs differently. So, for example, the last time I used a CGM, I noticed that I would get a glucose spike from oatmeal. Now, oatmeal is a very healthy food. I highly recommend it. But if I ate only oatmeal alone, I would get a significant glucose spike. Whereas there's plenty of research that shows that the fiber actually helps modulate glucose control. So I needed to learn to eat my oatmeal with nuts and modulate my portion so that I didn't get that glucose spike. And so why don't you want to have the spike? Because when you have a spike, you've got an increased release of insulin, which also potentially increases your fatty acid production and your fat deposition. So you want to try to kind of modulate your glucose increases and decreases so it's not a sharp spike. So anyways, I'm a huge proponent of that, and I think we'll see more and more accessibility to continuous glucose monitoring in the future. There are companies that are working on completely non-invasive monitoring, so then you won't be limited to a 2-week time period. But if you are not diabetic and you're interested in understanding your metabolism, you can do an experiment with a glucose monitor and really learn a lot about yourself. The other what can I do answer for weight management is intermittent fasting. So I'm going to take a few minutes and explain this to you. First of all, why intermittent fast? So not only does it help with weight control, but it does decrease visceral adiposity. It improves your cholesterol, triglycerides, your blood glucose, insulin resistance, improves blood pressure, inflammatory markers, decreases risk of cancer, improves reproductive health and mental health. So lots of good reasons to fast. And fasting is kind of a heuristic. I mean, here it might look a little complex, but once you figure out what works for you, you could combine fasting with maybe eating your rainbow or your fiber challenge with an overall overarching approach to a Mediterranean diet, and you could do very well for yourself. So there's 3 different types of fasting. One is time restricted eating. Another is alternate day fasting, and a third we'll call a modified alternate day fasting. And so the time restricted eating has gotten a lot of attention, and it does seem to work well for a number of people. Typically, the fasting is for 14, 16, or 18-hour windows. What you have to figure out with this, and I just want to point out, our Phenomics app actually has a diet diary, so you can track this when you're doing it. You need to figure out what works for you. And so my suggestion is, if you're interested in this approach, you basically eat what you want during a certain eating period. Start with the 14 hours. Don't start with an 18-hour window. You won't feel very good. Your body's not used to it. You need to train your body to in this new rhythm that you're creating for it. So you can, if you fast for 14 hours, then you can eat during a 10-hour window. An example might be between 9 and 7 p.m. That would be an example of a 10-hour window, but you can pick the window that works best for you. And then if you want to try a 16-hour fast with an 8-hour eating window, you might do something between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. and then an 18-hour fasting window and a 6-hour eating window. Might be something like between 12 and 6. For some people, they prefer having a breakfast during that time, and then they wouldn't have a dinner, so they'd stop eating earlier in the afternoon in order to allow for that 18-hour fast. People report really good results with this approach. You don't have to fast for 18 hours. What you need to do is figure out what is most comfortable for you and then stick with it and track it. Do it for a month and see how you feel. Track your weight, track your symptoms, and you'll see what works for you. Alternate day fasting is an alternative where you eat 5 days normally and then you do 2 days of fasting and you only drink water, herbal teas, or non-caloric beverages. So it's really no calories on those 2 days. And then the third option is the modified version of that, where on those 2 days you still eat, but it's only 20 to 30% of your usual intake. So maybe it's 300 to 500 calories. So you get to have a salad and some fish and maybe a small piece of fruit those days, which is maybe a little bit gentler on your system. But all three of those approaches do work. The time restricted is the most popular. I think it's the easiest to follow for a lot of people. So just some comments here on precision nutrition. When we get into precision nutrition at Phenomics Health, we're thinking about like what kinds of nutrients and herbals can help you. And these can be nutrients that you emphasize in the food that you eat, but it can also be nutrients that you emphasize in supplementation. So we really feel strongly that supplementation can make a huge difference. There is enough research out there that suggests it's so. Supplementation can never replace an unhealthy diet. So if you're not going to try your nutrition heuristic and try your Mediterranean diet, try to figure out what works for you on a diet end of things, the likelihood of supplements being the end all to be all is far, far less. However, once you've done that, once you've addressed your diet, we like to look at home-based biomarker testing. So we offer an optimal nutrition test, which is 27 micronutrients. We also are soon offering a cortisol test, a 4-point cortisol test, and our longevity test to evaluate your mitochondrial functioning. And that will be offered coming out any day, actually, from Phenomics. Anyways, we like to take the home-based biomarkers and combine them with symptoms information. Then you create your foundational diet, and then on top of that, you prioritize your key nutrients and supplementation. So here are some examples of supplementation that is substantiated from the literature that can be used for some of the symptoms of menopause. So for example, for hot flashes, sage tea is quite nice, or just sage. There are companies that offer supplements with sage. Black cohosh has been very well studied, actually, as well as ashwagandha, GLA, which is gamma-linolenic acid, which we usually take from evening primrose oil in a supplement, vitamin B6, Rapontic rhubarb, which is something I've seen in the US. We don't have it here in Switzerland. But even 2 tablespoons of flaxseed per day can make a huge difference in your hot flashes, but also can impact your sore breasts and other premenstrual kind of symptoms. So flax is a nice habit to have daily. Mood, anxiety, depression symptoms can be treated with omega-3s. It does require a decent amount, 2 grams or 2,000 milligrams a day of omega-3s. I personally take my omega-3s in liquid form in order to get a high enough dose, because otherwise it is a number of those gel capsules that you have to take. Again, the gamma-linolenic acid from evening primrose oil is important. Vitamin B6, B12, vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, selenium, probiotics, St. John's wort, saffron, and lemon balm extract. So am I saying you should take all of those supplements? Absolutely not. So how do you figure out which ones are for you? I think that's really the key, because more and more we've got these individual studies on individual supplements saying they work for XYZ symptoms, but how do you know they work for you? And so we actually offer this micronutrient test because we want to know your micronutrient status in order to prescribe a supplement that is a micronutrient. So if you're using B12 to treat your mood issues, but you don't have a B12 deficiency, then maybe there's something else that you should be emphasizing. The same with vitamin D. It's very powerful for mood disorders, but if your vitamin D is sufficient, then let's try something else. And so I think it's really key to use some kind of home-based biomarker testing. It's easily accessible that can really help you choose and strategize your supplementation. For stress, ashwagandha is really nice. Again, B12 comes up, phosphatidylserine, and the saffron and lemon balm extracts. I really love them. There's some nice research on them. Not a ton, but enough to use with a do no harm philosophy and no negative side effects. And that's something that we also look for. We have actually built a recommendation engine at Genomics Health, and we've got criteria for acceptability, and we look for the herbs and supplements that we can use that don't have the negative side effects. And also something else you do have to be aware of is if something that you're taking can actually conflict with any medications that you're taking. So it's important to check that out with your doctor. You can also look that up online to make sure that there's no conflict there. Constipation, you can treat with certain probiotics. Certain strains have been studied for constipation. We talked already about a fiber challenge, and a lot of women complain of this, and actually decreased progesterone decreases your intestinal mechanical movement. And so this could be one of the reasons why a lot of women get constipated during this time. So really focusing on that fiber challenge can be helpful, and adequate hydration. Magnesium citrate does a wonderful job to help clean out the bowels. But also zinc and selenium are important to make sure that you're replete in zinc and selenium, which we measure in our micronutrient test. And then sore breasts is another example for the evening primrose oil GLA, as well as omega-3s, B6, and that ground flax. So hopefully that just gives you some ideas of some things that you might want to investigate further for yourself. And in our smartphone app, we have this page for the nutrition, and actually I have to open my app here, my nutrition and lifestyle page, where when you take supplements, you can then track them in your app and then track your symptoms over time to see if they're helping. Because, a lot of us don't remember, if our constipation is different 3 or 4 weeks later, we often forget, especially if we feel better. So it's good to check that in. And I should also say that we're in the process of improving our app. So within a few days, we'll actually be even launching a new version of the app. So you can actually scan this QR code here, and you can download your app if you haven't done it already. You can track your emotional well-being. As you can see, how do you feel? You can track that every day. You can also track it throughout the day and watch how it changes. Learn about your patterns when you're at your best, when you're at your worst. And you can also track your symptoms, your nutritional intake, and your lifestyle choices. And then we've got an insight page. You go to the insight page and you can see your nutrition patterns against your symptoms. And that's something that clinicians really, really like to see. It's a lot easier for a clinician to treat you if you can come in with something that shows your symptoms over time, the severity, and what matters. And I mentioned that we have a collaboration that we're building with a gynecologist, and we're actually really looking at a lot of times these menopause clinics have really long waiting times. And in this case, this particular clinic has a 9-month wait time. And we're looking at how we can work with people to help strengthen their nutrition so that by the time they see their doctor, if they're a candidate for hormone replacement therapy, they are in a better state of health to tolerate the therapy, to augment the effects of the therapy, and maybe even potentially we can see if people will need less amounts of hormones to manage their symptoms and feel better, which then decreases the risk of diseases such as breast cancer when taking HRT. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So the app is available in the Apple App Store, also on Google Play. So that's really good news. And so why should you track? So why do we think this self-tracking, self-awareness is so important at Genomics Health? Really, because it will increase your awareness to make changes. You can monitor your progress and celebrate. You can visualize your improvements, and you can share these with your clinicians and clinician visits and really highlight where you have issues. Fill in the knowledge gaps. We don't know everything about nutrition yet, and you might find some new things out that haven't been researched yet just by your own tracking. And this is a lot of reasons why people get really excited about self-quantification, because you really learn a lot about yourself. Science is great, but we don't know everything. We're still learning. And of course, this offers an opportunity to improve research. And I mentioned that at Phenomics Health, we're really committed to real world research. We're really committed to filling that gap. And so in our app, we actually have a research agreement. And if you choose to participate, we will handle your data with care. We want to be able to analyze our results and show what works and what doesn't, and improve our knowledge of precision nutrition for women. I also want to tell you that in this white book that you will get from joining this webinar, there is a link in one of these prior slides here. Here you go, where you can click for a demo. And this actually will show you how to use the app. So don't hesitate to do that and just kind of follow along so you can figure out how to optimize your use of the app. It's really built so you can personalize it. So we do believe in education for transformation. So we have a blog site for you. You can peruse all kinds of wonderful blogs available there around nutrition, menopause, lifestyle. I will tell you, we are building, we're finalizing the build out of a stress and sleep program. We'll be launching it for the first time in the UK at the beginning of the year. We're really excited about that. And that's where you'll be able to get special access to more education on stress and sleep in blogs and webinars. We also have a healthcast on our website. If you click on community on the menu, you will see where you can get to our blogs and our health casts, our latest news. And we also have a forum for women to exchange ideas on how they're managing their menopause. So I want to just take a minute to thank you for attending. Would love to get your feedback on the app. Like I said, we're just about to update it. So if you downloaded the app, make sure you check back in a few days and see if there's a new update for it. We've got a few features that are not functioning optimally, and all of them are fixed now. So we just have to do that update. Have to approve the update after the webinar. You'll see there's also a new feature on the main page where you can report when you have no symptoms. So when you're doing such amazing things with your diet that you have no more symptoms. So we have just a couple minutes left. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and just see if anybody has any pressing questions here before we close out today. I do want to say that we'll be releasing the recording of the app at 18-hour today at 6 p.m. Central European time. So we'll release the recording then. And then we're also doing a Q&A on Instagram this evening. It's at 8 p.m. Our time, Central European time. So if you're on the East Coast US, then that would be 2 p.m. for you. And if you are on the West Coast, then that is 11 a.m. for you, and so on. So yes, thanks so much for joining us today. And Allison, thanks for your nice note. So glad you could come. Allison Acera is actually a hormone expert and dietitian, and she works with clients actually individually in this field. So we work with her. And we love having her on board. So don't hesitate to reach out to Allison if you want a counseling session. And don't hesitate to download our app. I'm sure she will work with you if you use the app for self-tracking. So thank you, Aline and Lizzie-Ann and Lada and Naomi for joining today as well from Phenomics. And Cindy, so nice that you could come today. So don't hesitate to reach out to us at wecare@phenomics.ch if you have further questions. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks so much for joining today. Have a great day.